Hi friends! Welcome back to my channel. To say it has been a minute would be the understatement of the century. We all know how crazy these last few years have been, and I really felt like I needed the time to just be and not have the pressure of trying to read a ton of books and talk about them in a way that sounded intelligent. So I stepped away from YouTube for about a year and I am back. I am loving reading again. I have been watching, reading, consuming a ton of stories, and I'm so excited to be back on this platform and talking to you guys. You guys have been so freaking patient. I have actually really missed talking to you guys in the comments, so I have really loved. Thank you to everyone who left me comments during the past year that I was able to respond to on my existing videos. I am officially rebooting my channel as of this month. I am super excited. I have a lot of really fun things to talk about and I can't wait to share them all with you. I watched 30 K-dramas this year, you guys. Like, I literally disappeared and watched 30 K-dramas. That's gonna be a video. Also, I've been reading again and I'm excited to do some reviews on some books that I've been reading. Yeah, so today we are going to come back to YouTube. What more perfect way to reintroduce myself to my channel than the Mid-Year Book Freakout tag. Everyone's doing it. I know I'm a couple days late, but who cares? I'm back, we're doing it, and I'm also going to include a July / possibly August TBR at the end of this video. For those of you who have been asking and asking and asking on my channel, what about Rhythm of War? So let's all collectively take a breath. Rhythm of War will happen. The vlog is gonna happen. I promise. I'm actually at a point now where I feel like I can handle committing to a book of that size. Those of you who have been around and stuck with me, you're the real MVPs of this channel. To my new subscribers, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to get to know you guys. Let's kick off this tag. Best book you've read in 2022 thus far, and I'm going to pull out Red Rising. It is a reread. This is obviously not the first time that I have read this book. However, I decided to reread it because getting back into reading, I really needed something that was going to give me a pick-me-up, an old favorite that was really going to just be familiar and the characters would pull me in right away. So I reread Red Rising, and still, this is I think my third reread of this book. It is still amazing. These are still some of my favorite sci-fi fantasy characters on the planet. I'm happy to say that every reread of this book just makes me love it more. Question number 2. Best sequel I've read in 2022 has to be Hunt for the Bamboo Rat by Graham Salisbury. I really enjoy these books. They are written for middle grade-ish readers, and they kind of detail different stories of Japanese American characters around the time of World War II. They're incredible. I cannot wait for my son to be old enough to read these. There's so much heart and grit in these stories, and they do a great job of just laying it all out there and being really candid about what life was like at that point for these people. Question number 3, a new release that I have not yet read, but I want to. I'm gonna cheat a little bit here because I realize that I'm like way behind, but I'm gonna pull out this one, Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson. Everyone on my channel is collectively groaning right now. I'm so sorry, guys. I realize that I have made you wait forever for this vlog, but I promise that me taking this time is going to mean the vlog is going to be so much better, and I'm actually going to enjoy the experience as opposed to just kind of drudging through it. So this is a book that is a new release that I still need to read this year, and I'm actually really excited about it now. Number 4, the biggest disappointment that I have read this year without any competition is Half the World by Joe Abercrombie, which kills me, knife in my heart to say this, because the first book I loved, absolutely loved it. The second book I really liked. It wasn't as good as the first book, but I still really liked it. Then I got to this, And I feel like this is probably a review that I'll be doing very shortly, so I'm not going to say too much about it because I want to do like a whole video on this. Suffice it to say, this was a incredibly disappointing ending for me. I hated so many of the things in the end of this book specifically, and especially what I felt like the character, like certain characters just, I don't want to say too much, because if you haven't read these books, I don't want to spoil anything. I'll save that for my review. Suffice it to say, so frustrated with this book. It was my first Joe Abercrombie experience, and I absolutely love his writing style, and I'm very excited to read some of his other work, but this book just did not do it for me. Alright, the biggest surprise for me in 2022 is definitely Red Sister by Mark Lawrence. Now, if you've been around my channel, I have definitely talked about before that I read his Prince of Thorns first book in his Emperor of Thorns ? Trilogy, which is a grimdark. I absolutely could not stand that book, and I know that that is a very polarizing book. You either absolutely love it or absolutely hate it. I hated it. However, I wanted to give Mark Lawrence a second chance, especially because I had seen a ton of positive reviews of this book, and the concept, it's literally a convent full of like assassin nuns, so that by itself, I was gonna give it a chance no matter what. So I read this book and I just loved it. I'm so glad that I gave Mark Lawrence a second chance. It was so good. It was so good. He pulled threads of that grimdark style and character work into this book, and it was just enough to really make it cool and interesting. And again, this is a book that I'm going to be doing a review on my channel for, so I don't want to spoil too much of that. However, very much loved this book. Very glad that Mark Lawrence was a second chance author for me because it was worth it. Favorite new author or new to me? Now this one's cheating a little bit because I read this at the end of December of 2021, but we're counting it anyways because it fits. This is The First Girl Child by Amy Harmon. This book really surprised me. I had seen literally the cover of it on Amazon, and I read the synopsis, and I put it on my Christmas list and was given it as a Christmas gift and just decided to read it. I'd never heard of the author before. I really went into this book with nothing but the synopsis and was so pleasantly surprised. It is a very Nordic-inspired fantasy world, which immediately for me was a win. Amy Harmon does a great job of creating characters that really pull you in by the heartstrings and create a really interesting, detailed world, story, characters, character relationships. Everything felt very motivated. I was really pleasantly surprised. I know this is kind of a first fantasy novel for Amy Harmon. I think she's done some fantasy romance slash historical stuff before, but I think, if I'm not, correct me in the comments, but I think that this is her first foray into fantasy, and I have to say, like, she should keep going with this because amazing work in this book. Highly recommend it to all of my fantasy readers out there. If you're looking for something that's a really fast, easy read that has some great world building and good characters, lots of heart, this is definitely one that I would recommend. Newest fictional crush. I am gonna go back to Red Sister for this question. I absolutely loved Hessa from Red Sister. If you've read the book, you know who I'm talking about. She is an absolute sweetheart. She is crippled, and so she can't do a lot of the like martial arts kind of things that a lot of the other novices in the story can do and a lot of her friends can do. But she has this incredibly strong drive for truth and learning, and she's never gonna let herself just sit idly by. She was such an incredible character. She was so beautiful and sweet and kind, and just I loved her character so much that I think she definitely falls into this category for me out of the books I've read this year. This one is kind of the same as the last one minus the crush factor, which I'm like, to me isn't really that different, but I'm gonna actually go for Theft of Swords by Michael J. Sullivan, which overall this book was like 3.5-star read for me. However, one of the characters in this book that I absolutely fell head over heels for was Myron the monk. He was a hoot and a half. He is whisked away on a wild adventure and he's discovering the world for the first time. He's literally never been close to a horse, doesn't know anything about anything, and watching him discover the world along with these two like seasoned, battle-hardened men was just precious. I literally finished reading this book last night, Snowflower and the Secret Fan by Lisa C. I have read Lisa C before. Her book, The Tea Girl of Hummingbird Lane, was one of my favorite reads from last year, and I absolutely loved the second book that I read of hers this year. This book follows the story of two girls who become best friend or kind of soulmates for life during a time in China when foot binding was still very common, and just their story, it follows them from very, very young all the way to the end of their lives. It is heartbreaking, it's heartrending, and it really draws a lot of attention to what these women went through in this kind of a system. The end of this book made me cry. I cried. I did it. And Lisa C. made me cry in both of her books, which is a feat. I actually don't cry in books that often. But yeah, this one definitely did it. Then a book that made me happy. Okay, so my son is 9 years old and he and I have been reading the Wing Feather Saga by Andrew Peterson, and these books are just so wholesome. We have been having a great time. I have been doing a whole bunch of different voices for all the different characters. We've been having a blast reading these books. We are on book 2 right now, and anybody who has middle grade readers cannot recommend this series highly enough. The Wing Feather Saga. This is the first book on the edge of the dark sea of darkness. This book just makes me so happy. The characters are very fun. There's a lot of great family themes in these books. The most beautiful book I've bought or received this year. Now, the one that I immediately gravitated toward on my shelf was The Black Tongue Thief by Christopher Buehlman. I have not read this book yet. I picked it up at Barnes & Noble. My husband and I were out on a book shopping date and we each bought a book, and this was the one that I pulled off the shelf, and the back sounded really interesting. I honestly don't know anything about the author or anything about this book, but that cover though. So everyone who is hyping this book on the cover, we've got Nicholas Ames, Kings of the Wild, one of my favorite fantasy books that I read all of last year. Then you turn it around and you have Glenn Cook and Brent Weeks. Okay, fine. I'll be honest, Nicholas Ames was the one that really got me. Okay, the final question is what books I need to read by the end of the year. Now, I definitely come from the camp of I don't believe in needing to read anything. However, I definitely have a couple of books that I want to get to before the end of the year. One of which, yes, is Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson, because it has been plenty of time and I'm definitely ready to read this now. The only other book that really has been kind of bugging me lately that I'd really like to get to before the end of the year is the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. I'm very, very curious. Very curious, especially after my very 50-50 experience with Half a World, Half a War, Half King trilogy. I'm very, very curious to see how I feel about the ending of this trilogy as opposed to that one. So I would say those two are probably the ones that I'm kind of putting on my back burner of these are the two for sure I want to get to this year. Okay, really quickly at the end of this, I'm going to preview a little bit of what I'm hoping to read in July and possibly the beginning of August this year. I pulled 4 books off the shelf because I'm trying to give myself a lot of grace and just not throw myself off a cliff with reading this year. But I pulled these books. So I have Bel Canto by Ann Patchett, which is a book that I was given by a friend of mine. It is not in my typical genre. It's a lit fic about... I'll just read you the back because I don't even know how to synopsize this. Somewhere in South America, at the home of the country's vice president, a lavish birthday party is being held in honor of the powerful businessman Mr. Hosokawa. Roxanne Koss, opera's most revered soprano, has mesmerized the international guests with her singing. It is a perfect evening, until a band of gun-wielding terrorists takes the entire party hostage. But what begins as a panicked, life-threatening scenario slowly evolves into something quite different, a moment of great beauty, as terrorists and hostages forge unexpected bonds and people from different continents become compatriots, intimate friends, and lovers. I was told I need to read this book. I have no idea what I'm getting into with this book, but this is one that I'm hoping to get to this month. It's not super long, and it is definitely kind of a switcheroo from my normal reading genre, which I'm kind of excited about. Secondly, a book that I'm hoping to get to this month is While the Locust Slept. This is a book that is a memoir of a boy who was stationed in an orphanage here in Minnesota where I live, and actually went to the same orphanage that someone in my family history went to, and I have a lot of information from that family history, and so I'm doing a little bit of research, hoping to write a book about it at some point. But this is, the memoir of a young boy who was stationed at a Minnesota orphanage, and he was Native American. And that came with its whole host of issues for him at this orphanage. And so I am definitely interested in reading his perspective on the orphanage. And I'm guessing that it's just going to reaffirm a lot of what I already know about everything that went on there. Next is the book that I'm actually hoping to start today, and that is Malice by John Gwynne. I have been staring at this book for years. Like, this cover was always the one when I walked through Barnes & Noble that I was like, I'm gonna read that book someday, because it's just, I don't know what's so cool about this cover, but it is very cool, and I'm very excited to read this. I know that this series is very, very much beloved within the fantasy community, so I am super excited. I have read nothing of John Gwynne prior to this, so very excited for my foray into his series. Last but not least is Grey Sister by Mark Lawrence. My ring light's fighting me here. This is the second book in his Book of the Ancestor series. I always forget the series titles of these things. So Grey Sister by Mark Lawrence. I'm excited to see what happens. I'm holding my breath a little bit because I'm just really hoping, like we know with trilogies, a lot of times that third book can kind of be up. So I'm just kind of hoping that this one is not. But I'm very excited to read this, and that is my very tentative TBR for the months, oh goodness, of July and August. Yeah, those. So we will see if I can get to all of those. I will keep you guys posted. I'm going to be doing some reviews on some of the books that I have already read, and I'm going to be doing some videos on some K-dramas that I have seen this year, because I watched a lot of them. So yeah, keep watching my channel for new videos. I'm very, very excited to get back into YouTube and chat with you guys again about all things storytelling and characters and all that good stuff. I hope you are all having a fantastic week, and I will see you in the next video.